In the tense spring of 1775, the American colonies felt like a pot ready to boil over. Rumors of British troops preparing for a secret march spread quietly among taverns and market stalls. Farmers, merchants, and blacksmiths whispered of danger, yet no one knew when it would strike. Beneath the surface of everyday life, fear and hope tangled together as the idea of rebellion slowly became a possibility no one could ignore. Boston, under watchful British control, felt like a city holding its breath. Red-coated soldiers patrolled streets with polished boots and stern faces. Their presence reminded everyone that the Crown's rules were meant to be followed without question. But behind closed windows and shuttered doors, patriots met in secret, determined to defend their right to live freely, even if the cost was everything they had. Among these determined patriots was a man not known for power or wealth, just for skill and courage. His name was Paul Revere, a silversmith whose hands shaped metal by day and carried messages for the Sons of Liberty by night. Though he held no military rank, his loyalty made him one of the most trusted men in the growing movement for independence. In early April, colonial spies learned something alarming. The British Army planned to march toward Lexington and Concord. Their mission was to arrest two key Patriot leaders and seize weapons stored by local militias. If this succeeded, the heart of the rebellion could be crushed before it ever had the chance to ignite. Leaders knew someone must warn the countryside immediately. On the evening of April 18, Revere walked through dim Boston streets toward the home of Patriot leader Joseph Warren. Lantern light flickered over cobblestones as he listened to Warren's urgent instructions. The British were moving soon, maybe within hours. Revere must ride to Lexington and warn Samuel Adams and John Hancock. Everything depended on getting the message out before the British arrived. Revere understood the danger clearly. If British patrols caught him, he would be treated as a traitor. Yet fear did not shake him. He had carried secret messages before, but tonight was different. Tonight he would not only warn leaders, he would spark the alarm that could awaken an entire countryside. His ride might be the difference between freedom and defeat. Before leaving Boston, Revere helped coordinate a backup plan. In case he was captured, fellow patriots would send signals from the North Church Tower, lanterns shining across the Charles River. One lantern meant the British marched by land, two by sea. These lights would speak the truth even if his voice couldn't. With plans in place, Revere prepared for the journey he knew could cost his life. As darkness settled, the city's harbor glimmered with moonlight. Revere boarded a small rowboat to cross the river quietly, avoiding British warships anchored nearby. Oars dipped soundlessly into the water while the cold breeze carried the distant clinks of chains and metal. Every shadow seemed alive with danger. But with steady breath, he reached the far shore and hurried toward his waiting horse. His horse, a fast and powerful mare, stamped anxiously in the dirt as if sensing the urgency of the night. Revere whispered to her, calming her spirit. He checked the saddle straps once more and placed his hand on the hilt of the small pistol at his side. Then, with one final look at the glowing city behind him, he mounted up and kicked off into the darkness. The night was silent except for the pounding of hooves echoing against lonely roads. Revere leaned forward, urging his horse faster. Lanterns in distant farmhouses glowed faintly, hinting at families asleep, unaware of the danger approaching. He knew he must wake them, not just from sleep, but from the comfort that allowed disaster to creep in unnoticed. The wind cut across his face, sharpening his focus. Revere called out as he rode through small clusters of homes, "The British are coming." His voice broke the stillness like a warning bell. Doors opened, lights flickered, and startled residents stepped outside. Some grabbed muskets, others ran to alert neighbors. The quiet towns of Massachusetts were beginning to stir. Further along, the road curved into a narrow path flanked by thick woods. Revere's horse seemed to sense danger, slowing slightly as shadows shifted around them. He heard a rustle, then the unmistakable clatter of British boots. A patrol appeared, blocking his path. Revere pulled sharply on the reins, the horse rearing back as he darted into a side path, escaping by inches. His heart pounded, but he did not stop. The British chased him briefly, shouting orders and firing a warning shot that cracked through the night air. But the darkness, the speed of his horse, and luck carried him away from their grasp. When the danger faded behind him, he slowed only long enough to catch his breath and whisper gratitude to the night that shielded him. As he approached the next village, dogs barked and lights clicked on one by one. Men grabbed jackets, women collected their children, and messengers sprang into action. Revere's warning spread faster than he could ride. The countryside, long tense and waiting, was finally awake. Every person he reached became another link in a growing chain of resistance. Revere reached Lexington close to midnight. Adams and Hancock were asleep in a safe house guarded discreetly by militia. When Revere explained the British were marching soon, the two leaders jolted awake. They understood immediately that this was the moment they had feared and prepared for. Militia captains hurried to spread the word, while Revere pressed on toward Concord. By now, the moon hung high, watching over the frantic movements of patriots preparing for the coming storm. Revere rode again, faster this time, knowing the British would not slow their advance. Every minute that passed meant redcoats moving closer. He pushed his horse to the limit, feeling the animal strain beneath him yet never falter. Another rider joined him, William Dawes, who had taken a different route from Boston to avoid detection. Together they exchanged quick words, comparing the news each carried. Their mission was the same: warn as many people as possible before the British arrived. Side by side, the two horses thundered across bridges and narrow dirt paths. At another village, the riders stopped to meet a group of patriots who offered fresh information. The British force marching from Boston was large, hundreds of soldiers. Dawes and Revere realized they needed more help. They were joined by young Drive, Samuel Prescott, who knew the roads even better and agreed to ride with them toward Concord. The three riders charged forward, forming a small but determined team. Their silhouettes stretched across the ground as lanterns flickered behind them. Hope rose with their speed, and for a moment, it felt as if nothing could stop them. But fate had another challenge waiting. Suddenly, shadows emerged ahead, another British patrol. The soldiers shouted, ordering them to halt. The riders split in three different directions, hoping confusion would give them a chance. Prescott leapt his horse over a stone wall and escaped into the night. Dawes rode hard but soon lost control of his horse, which threw him, ending his ride. Revere pushed into a narrow path, but it led straight into the hands of the British. The patrol surrounded him, demanding his name and purpose. Revere kept his voice calm though his pulse raced. He insisted he carried only personal business and tried to appear harmless. But his reputation had preceded him. The soldiers recognized him, and with stern expressions, they seized his horse and began questioning him more aggressively. Despite the pressure, Revere refused to give British officers any useful information. Instead, he spoke boldly, warning them that hundreds of armed colonists were already gathering. His words, though partly a bluff, made the soldiers uneasy. After some debate, they decided to release him but kept his horse to prevent further riding. Revere continued his journey on foot. Walking through the dark woods, Revere could hear distant drums and marching boots as the British advanced. He had no horse now, but he still had his determination. After several miles, he reached the town where Adams and Hancock had moved for safety. Breathless and exhausted, he assured them that his warning had spread and militias were preparing. Soon after, dawn began to creep across the horizon. The sky shifted from black to pale blue as the first light touched the fields of Lexington. Colonial militiamen, called Minutemen, stood ready with muskets in hand. They were farmers, shopkeepers, and ordinary neighbors, but now they waited as defenders of their homes. Revere's message had reached them in time. The British arrived, marching in perfect formation. A tense silence settled over the field. Neither side wanted to fire first, yet both understood that a single spark could ignite war. That spark came suddenly, from an unknown gun, and the first shots of the American Revolution echoed across the land. The battle had begun, not by surprise, but by preparation. Although the British won the initial clash, their mission had been damaged. Weapons hidden in Concord were largely moved or protected, and Patriot leaders had escaped capture. Militias poured in from every direction, increasing pressure on the British as they attempted to retreat. Revere's ride had transformed the landscape from sleeping towns to armed resistance. Throughout the day, thousands of colonists rose to defend their territory. They fought from behind stone walls, trees, and fences, using their knowledge of the land to their advantage. The British, frustrated and wounded, struggled through miles of relentless attacks. The rebellion the Crown hoped to crush was now fully awake and burning brighter than ever. News of the battle spread rapidly, reaching distant towns and inspiring more volunteers to join the cause. What had begun as a single midnight ride now pushed 13 colonies toward unity. The idea of independence, once only a whisper, grew stronger as ordinary people realized they could stand against the world's most powerful army. Paul Revere, though not a soldier in the day's battles, had played his part before the sun even rose. His message had prepared the fighters, protected the leaders, and ensured the militias were ready. His courage on that night became a symbol of determination, proof that even one person, with one mission, could change the course of history. Years later, when America finally achieved independence, Revere's ride became a story passed down through generations. It reminded the young nation that freedom often begins with a single voice refusing to remain silent. And so Paul Revere, the silversmith who risked everything in a single night, became the midnight rider who helped save a country before it was even born.